Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode number 154 of the Peak of Serenity podcast. I am, as always, one of your hosts, emallson, and joining me, we have my co host, Anomoly.
Hello.
And this week, we maybe finally have the final episode on the season 2 affixes. I'm not gonna lie, when they announced that they were making changes, I did not expect to be talking about them this much. But I also didn't expect the slate of affixes that they came out with to be such ass. So
What? They're good. Every affix is great. I will hold to that. So.
yeah, you're just no. Anyway, but before we get into that, and how did your raid week go?
It went surprisingly well. We got our one night clear. I was actually just looking up just to make sure I wasn't lying. We got a one night clear. Did have, our typical, we'll say Razagath struggles.
Mhm.
Wiped Razagath probably like 10 times, I want to say. I lied. We actually wiped. Oh yeah, we wiped exactly 10 times. I nailed it. And uh and And yeah, it wasn't a bad raid night. Super clean. Um, Razagath is always a good time. Got couple new people their kills. Got zero loot. So yeah, it was a great week. Still like we I'm pretty sure that whatever token Monk is on, we have seen one from Razgath in our like 5 or 6 kills.
That's fun.
However, our literal whatever the Warlock token is, they are re-rolling for tertiaries at this point on every
Oh yeah,
token. It's so stupid.
most of our tokens are going for tertiaries at this point, except for the ones that like people re-rolled. Like we
Uh-huh.
have one of our healers re-rolled from Evoker to Resto Druid, and so they're collecting Mythic tokens now.
Gotcha.
But
Gotcha.
pretty much everything else is going for tertiaries. Razageth tokens, I guess, still aren't unless there's like one that consistently goes for tertiaries, because people just got it from their vault, right?
Yeah,
But
that's
yeah,
fair. But yeah, other than that, it was pretty forgettable, clear, we'll say. At least in terms of like stuff we got and like the way it went. So um yeah, Razagath not getting it easier, which isn't too bad, but like every other boss, like one shot, which is cool.
nice.
It's the type of raid that I feel like I enjoy. Um, I think
It's
I think
really
our
nice on reclear.
yeah, I think our Kurog kill was like our lowest P3 percentage. We got it like I think we were in the teens, honestly, when we pushed. So
Yeah. Well, speaking of Kurok, so we also one night cleared this week, which is nice because we
mhm.
didn't last week. We didn't get the Thea, and we didn't go back. So we technically only raided one night last week, but we did not go back to get the
Nice,
Thea.
nice.
Um, but we one night cleared this week with like an hour to spare. Very nice. But we also, while doing that, tried a few new things.
Okay.
We did the one intermission Karog strat. So
Oh,
we killed him in 5 minutes 18 seconds, which is I don't know what that rankings, but it's like you have the like 5-ish minute kills, and then
yep.
you have the 7 minute kills because it's just that's how long the intermission is. Uh, but that was fun. We did that while four healing, which is uh becoming more common, I guess, but it's not that common. So that's
Yeah,
cool.
we talked about four healing going into it. It was the last boss we killed in the night, and I think we just wanted to be done. So
Yeah,
just like 5 heal, do the normal stuff, and we'll go forward.
we had somebody that was is basically like stepping down from rating for IRL reasons that progged most of the tier with us and basically everything but Razagath.
Yeah.
And we got them their CE on Friday, but they weren't going to be on until an hour into our raid, so we couldn't just do like Aranog Broodkeeper Razagath, right?
Gotcha.
So we did the Karog Wing first. So we just went over there and just like tried to do this thing on Kurog until they were online.
That's
And
funny.
we got it, and it was cool. And we
Nice.
four healed Diurna instead of 5 healing. We didn't change anything on Razagath this week, which is good because we changed a ton last week. Yeah, like it was
Gotcha.
just on the whole like a pretty good night. The only bosses we wiped to are Kurog, Razageth, and Dothea. And if we had not been trying to do the thing on Kurog, we would have not wiped.
Yeah, one shot. Yeah. Yeah, we actually won. I think we one shot to Thea this week. So
Nice. Yeah.
yeah, that boss is no longer. I think our we're getting a little bit better. We had a terrible Sinarth though.
Oh yeah.
Like
We did
we
too,
had
actually.
we had oh yeah, we pulled with Lust the debuff from
Oh,
trash,
nice,
didn't
nice.
reset, lost 3 people to the first pull-in because we were all yelling about the fact that we still had the Lust debuff. Uh ended up losing at least 1 or 2 people each platform on the way up. So like basically
Nice.
final phase was like 15 people and
Yeah.
like somehow still
That's
killed it. But
actually
yeah.
about what ours is. I just pulled it up. So we lost one person immediately on pull to the puddles underneath the spider.
Yeah.
Um, Another person to the first bridge. Two more people actually to the first bridge. We lost a tank
Oh nice.
to getting pulled off, and then so we res them, and we just lost a couple more people to the transition into the last phase, and then
Yeah.
killed the boss.
God, yeah. It's nice that you can still do that. Like that's such a
Yeah,
it's such a change from like last like S Shadowlands bosses where like you lose like 3 people even like a month into farm and it's like, well, might as well wipe it up. We're not doing this.
yeah,
So
yeah. It definitely like there was like one boss in Sanctum that you could do that on, right? Like you could do that on. I mean, aside from like the first two, right?
yeah.
You could do that on what's his name, Soul Render. Soul Render, you could just have a ton of people die and still do it.
Yeah. That's true.
Uh,
That's true.
but that's like it. Because like Guardian, you would run into issues with not having the people like your immunes would die, and then you would be able to do the soaks, and so then the
Yeah.
boss would just instantly push, and then you would die. Fate Scribe was a complete mess, and
Yeah.
Kel'Thuzad,
KT'd fall behind.
you would just
You just
like
fall behind.
it wasn't even that you would fall behind necessarily; it's that your damage distribution would get out of whack,
That's true.
and then
Yeah.
one side would be too fast for the other one, and you would just die. It's not that you didn't have enough; it's that it was like unequal, and
Yeah.
yeah, that fight sucked. Never do that again.
No, fair enough. But yeah, no, yeah, it was good. Seems like good raid week for both of us. So sort of crushed it out in that sort of getting comfortable with farm phase, we'll say. Just in time to do something new and like what? We only have like 2 more clears, right? 3 more clears maybe. So
Yeah, that's actually a question. Uh, are you guys planning to raid the like dead week of 10.1 for now?
yeah, we typically do. So I would
Okay.
assume we still go in. Maybe not on Tuesday, maybe just do a third like a Thursday raid, like our second day raid. But yeah, no, we'll go in just to test everything out and then get ready for next week, the next week. So
Yeah. I don't know if we are or not. I haven't asked about that. I kind of want to just be like, we're not raiding that week.
yeah,
In part because even though we are raiding on Friday, right? They've had a really bad track record with just like week one
yeah,
server everything.
yeah, yeah. So
So
we'll see. But we've always generally rated like the that week anyway. So um, but yeah, no, we'll see. Yeah, we only what it's May 2nd, right? New patch comes out, so it's
yeah,
only
it's two
two
weeks
more
away. I just
clears
had
and
to look
then
that
yeah,
up. Yeah.
yeah, 2 more
It's
clears and then it's that patch week. So
yep.
gosh, I have to play the game again.
And so we have three resets left basically of this, and then it's on to the next.
Nice.
Man, it is
Figure out
crazy how fast
what
it
our
is
healing comp
approaching.
is. Literally, every one of our evokers has been like, "I don't want to play evoker next year." Like, oh
Shocker,
god,
shocker. That's what ours
let's
did.
figure this out. Yeah,
Like, I wonder what the evoker healing population is going to look like in the next season. That's
yeah,
going to be something that we'll have to come back to after we get deeper into next season.
nice,
Um,
nice.
yeah. So that's raid for the week. We have a relatively light raid week. There or light news week. There were a couple of miscellaneous things. More changes across the board, basically to Mythic Plus affixes. There's a bunch of changes there.
Yep.
And then some raid news. There was more raid testing and some stuff about loot and item levels in the raid.
Yeah.
Uh,
So
you want to start with the raid stuff?
yeah, let's start with the raid stuff. So yeah, Blizzard did drop a post going over a bunch around just tier set acquisition for season 2, but then included in that was discussion on or a section on the Void Touched Curio, which is the Omni-Token item that drops from the Scale Commander Sakareth. Is that how you say that? Whatever.
Sarkareth.
Sarkareth. So yes, this is a new Omni token they've talked about. Basically, it will drop from the final boss of the raid, and it's essentially anyone can loot it. So it's not a class specific item, so anyone can loot it. And then you can trade it for any tier item you want. So it sort of just allows you to plug those holes where you see fit. Um, and the items that you can get will drop at their appropriate item level, meaning that like if you're picking up, like I think a helm, um, from a mythic Omni token, it'll be a 447 helm that you get to grab from the boss. Won't be the max item level, won't be the min because helms drop sort of in the middle from a tier point of view. Um, so yeah, so that's basically all they talked about was like how it converts and like how it'll drop. They didn't really talk much about how many will drop or if one will always drop.
We know that
Um,
there's always one. That we do
oh,
know.
so we know that. Gotcha. Sorry,
That was like,
I meant.
we know that there's always tokens. We don't know, like, if it's tokens plural or if it's one token. If it's, like, we assume it follows the same group loot rules, but that's just assuming, right? We don't test this
Yeah,
boss, so nobody can go in on normal and just, like, kill the boss and see what drops, right? One of the
exactly,
things from this
exactly.
week is we have the vendor that has all the different items on it. One of the other questions actually that people had about this is it going to be like end of raid max eye level tier? Because then that would give it kind of persistent value after you completed your tier set. And the answer is no. The items that the vendor has are at the appropriate item level for where they are in the raid. So, for example, the heroic glove slot, the gloves and legs drop from mid tier bosses, and those have eye level 431. So even though your curio comes from the last boss that would normally have a heroic item level of 437, when you use this token at the vendor, you will get a 431 glove or leg if you need. So you can't use it to like get a high eye level of that particular slot.
Yep, exactly. But this is a nice addition, I think, to the game in general. It keeps the last boss interesting, and also like just it's an additional chance at tier, right?
Yeah.
And even focus tier then too, so you don't have to like hope for the one boss you kill that week drops it, or like go back into LFR or normal if you're clearing heroic, right? To
Yeah.
just kill the one boss that drops the token you need for 4 piece. So
This should definitely help with the kind of like streakiness of the token drops where you might get a lot of venerated tokens one week
yeah,
and then not get any venerated tokens for 3 or 4 weeks after that, and you have people just sitting around with like 3 pieces waiting for that fourth one that never comes, and this will help clean up those situations.
uh
uh
huh,
the thing still that is concerning is that they haven't told us if it's going to be one item regardless of raid size, because if it is, that's gonna really incentivize doing just a couple of not like full on splits, but you know, most CE guilds week one are going to be able to do um 2 groups on normal, which is just doubling the number of guaranteed tier tokens that you get from that. And it's just like, I don't want to do that, really.
yeah,
Granted, it's a normal token. Um, and depending on Sarkareth tuning, it might be possible to do that on Heroic as well, but I wouldn't plan on that. They have a pretty strong track record over the past 2 expansions of, or Shadowlands and this expansion of Heroic end bosses not being a complete pushover week.
yeah, exactly, yeah,
So I don't know. It's gonna be. I'm hoping it just follows the same rules as the regular token.
yeah, yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, you would hope, and then Yeah, we'll see. Blizzard has done
Mm-hmm.
some crazy stuff in the past, so
We'll see.
um, but that's on sort of the token area. The next up is along with this, the they put out the sort of the full, like, I'll say, like, item level charts, which we may have covered before, but basically there'll be 4 levels across each difficulty from an item level perspective, with basically each jumping up 3 item level. So like on Mythic, for example, you'll start with the early bosses at 441, and then you'll jump up to 444 for the fourth and fifth boss, 447 for the sixth and seventh boss, and then 450 finally for your final two. So sort of an increase as you go through the raid of stronger items coming up. Um, I don't know how you feel about this. I am starting to not enjoy the multiple steps in a raid. Um,
Really?
yeah, and my main issue with it is, and I don't know if this is the case this raid, but I know it was the case with certain items in the last raid where it has to do with the catalyst plus tier, and items like non-set items, say a glove dropping at a higher item level later on in the tier
Yeah.
versus your set piece gloves,
Yeah.
which generally means that, like, if you're min maxing, like, you of course take the set piece early, but then, like, those final gloves are just catalyst gloves, right? That's generally all they're going to be used for,
Well,
which is
most of them, most like I guess it depends on what boss they chop from, right? A lot of them are going to be worse. A lot of the rate, like half the rate, are worse than Mythic Plus Vault items. And so by the end of the season, you're taking, random items from the vault that you just take to the catalyst and you just drop in there. Like right now, it's 421 eye level from the Mythic Plus row, right? If you're doing 20s.
yeah.
And so that's better than everything or equal to at least everything up until you hit Broodkeeper Diurna, at which point it turns into 424 gear in raid. So you kind of end up with the same thing, except coming from Mythic Plus instead of raid, or the Mythic Plus Vault, which is a little bit more limited than raid loot.
Yeah. But I guess my point is that it's sort of, I don't know, it kind of feels sort of counterintuitive to have, like, it's the same idea. Like, I don't know, maybe I'm sort of stretching here with
So
this,
I'm
but
gonna I'm gonna pull up something and I'm gonna show you why I am a fan of this. And
okay.
I'm gonna be nice to video people. I'm gonna switch it to dark. Welcome. Switching it to dark. So, here is the item levels for my raid team throughout progression this tier. So we started off. This is the first boss one is very unusual. First two boss ones because are unusual because of how low we start being the first tier. So we started at eye level 391, but that's not realistic compared to like how we'll start next year.
Right.
We killed Aranog at 391. We killed Primal Council at 398, and we killed Terrace at 405. And that covers like the first couple of weeks of raid. We started Terrace like the same time we killed Primal Council. So like um we were realistically around 404 at the time, like second week of the raid. Um, but then if you look at our raid eye level as we progress through this, um, we go from 404 when we kill Sunarth, we're 408. When we kill Kurog, we're 410, almost 411. When we killed Dethea, which was a short boss for us, we were only 412, only one eye level up, basically. But then when we get to Diurna, we kill Diurna, we're eye level 414. And then when we kill Razagath, we're eye level 417. So like over the course of the last half of the raid, basically, we go up 7 eye levels in the last four, actually more than that, because we started Kurag at 407. So we went up 10 eye levels um, in the last half of the raid. And you could make an argument that that's not like something that is only due to the loot structure, but if you look at Sepulcher, um, We basically didn't go up in eye level. Like we hit Halandris, and we killed Halandris, we gained half an eye level from there to when we killed the jailer. And that's
Yeah.
just a completely different thing. And then like when we killed the jailer, we were basically gear capped, right? So farm was not any easier than doing the jailer on prog in terms of like numbers. Obviously we had practice at that point, so it was easier because we had practice.
Uh-huh.
But it was not easier in a numbers sense.
Yeah.
Whereas this, like, we killed Razageth at 417, but our raid's like 420 something now.
Yeah, and so I would say I'm not discounting that the jumps are good. All I'm saying is that the mini ones in between, like I'm fine if it was like 2 levels or like the final 2 bosses are the only 2 that dropped enhanced
But then
loot.
you don't get this jump, like the progression of eye levels throughout the raid tier.
But again, my point, just speaking strictly about tier, it sort of sucks when like
The
you
early
loot the
tier
tier
items, the
token
tier tokens are
are
just like
essentially
temporary
use
items. Yeah.
they're always going to be temporary. So like
Yeah.
from my point of view, it would have been nice. It would have been a nice change to say tier always drops at the same item level, whether that's max item
Yeah.
level
Okay. I
or
can see that.
min item level. That way, like the idea of getting like gloves late in the tier, you're not essentially always turning them into tier gloves. You might actually use them because they're maybe better in terms of a stat distribution or something like that.
It still does happen that you do actually use them in just as like as gloves, right? Because sometimes it is better
Right.
stats. Like some of the brewmaster tier items were like haste mastery, which is just not good. Like it's
Right.
again, brewmaster is just more stats is always better. So you use it over a lower item level piece and you're happy about it. But
Right.
if you had the choice between a crit verse, 421 piece and a haste mastery 421 piece, you take the crit verse one for raid. Um, and so there's like crit verse. I don't remember what's. There's a crit verse item that competes with a haste mastery tier item, and your ideal setup is to use the non-tier version.
Gotcha.
Um, so it does still happen, but it is way more limited. So you definitely have a point there. It's like requires a very specific combination in order to take that. Because again, like
Yeah.
if those gloves or whatever side it is didn't exist, you would just always convert the item into higher eye level tier. Or if the tier
Yeah.
didn't
Which
have awful.
yeah, which is like sort of that was my only point. Is it just sort of sucks that not sucks. It's just annoying that like yeah, those items. I get well. Maybe I'm starting to talk myself out of it too, because like it's nice that those gloves are then now useful later, if only to replace tier. But like at the same token, it's like sucks to actually get your tier token, be excited, and then be like 2 weeks later get some gloves that you're just going to replace your old tier with because you
Yeah.
have catalyst points. So
There's
or
also
energies.
like I mean that just kind of happens too with stuff like Great Vault tier items. Like I mentioned the like 421 situation, but I also ended up getting I think I got like week one shoulder token from something like that, right? And then I
Mhm.
went and I looted my vault and I had one mythic slot in my vault and it just happened to roll the Diurna mythic shoulders.
Nice.
So I went
Yeah.
straight to 4 tier shoulders and I wore that the like it was like, well, it sucks that we gave me this tier token. Um but I mean I'm glad I have 424 tier for the rest of the progression.
Makes it easy. Yeah. I think I pulled shoulders too really early, actually. So similar position.
Um but yeah, and I mean like that's I guess quick note because while we're on the subject of tier acquisition and tier distribution, the math that I did in Sepulcher about how you should distribute loot to maximize tier set gains is still mostly accurate despite the move to master loot. And for those that haven't been listening to the podcast for that long, uh, quick overview of what that is spread your tier out. And what that does is it means that your untradeable items that come from your vault are less likely to land in a slot that somebody already has.
Yep.
Um, because the more you pile onto a single person, the more likely they are that if they get any tier item, it's in a slot that they already have. That only really applies to guilds like ours, where we're taking multiple weeks to or multiple months to clear the tier. So there's plenty of great vault options. But it like if you're like this is obviously completely irrelevant. But if you're taking like
Yeah.
3+ weeks to clear the tier, which is pretty much everybody, uh, optimizing early tier set acquisition comes down to don't stack it all on one person. So if you know, that's a quick tip.
Nice. Nice. Um, but cool, yeah. So I mean, it's loot tiers are out there, so eye level tiers are out there. There'll be 4 progressions this time around, which is like
One,
I guess it's one more, right? Then
no, we had 4 this tier. It's this tier started
did we?
415, 418, 421, 424.
I do not pay attention, so that's
Yeah,
fair enough.
Taros, Aranog, and Primal Council dropped 415. Um, what's it? Tenarth, uh,
All right,
Tenarth hits 21.
I'd have to look in game.
Yeah, I don't remember. There's like one boss that drops 421, and then Thea
Iron.
and Kurog drop. No. Tenarth is 418. Kurog and Thea are like 421, and then Razageth and Diurna are 424. I think
Gotcha.
it's something like that. The other thing
Okay.
about this actually, we also got the item levels for the very rare drops, which you could kind of guess the pattern probably if you paid attention to what things drop at in current tier. It's pretty much just, the item level of the thing that you have of like a regular non very rare drop +6, except for the last boss, which is +7. But this is the second tier in a row where it's followed the same pattern, so I guess now we can actually call it a pattern instead of just guessing.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. Um. So yeah, so tons of interesting loot to grab, or at least the item level stuff being out there is cool. So sounds like I mean most people you should sit right around like the 420 mark. So that's essentially what like mid to end tier normal loot. So heroic should still pose still have a bunch of upgrades for you, even if you are rating mythic at this point. So um which is good. Um I guess. I feel like it wasn't always the case. I feel like previous tiers, like Mythic was the heroic item level. But I might be thinking about a couple years ago now,
It's been
versus
a
the last
while
couple
that
tiers. So
that's so like
yeah,
they started doing the staggered island levels thing in Nyalotha, and there the last 2 bosses dropped stuff that was like the halfway,
yeah,
and that's how they did it in Shadowlands. So
gotcha.
last time, I don't know if it's ever been like since the transition to normal heroic mythic as the like difficulty structure. I don't know if it's ever been that heroic items were same eye level as early.
Yeah, maybe not. Maybe I'm just making up things because I'm old. Could be.
Yeah.
Could be. All right. Well, moving forward a little bit, there was raid testing this week. Tons of mythic raid testing actually. So we got 2 bosses on Thursday and then 2 bosses on Friday. Plus, Raid Finder was live all weekend. So the first wing away Raid Finder. So I, as always, did 0 mythic testing. But I don't know if you were able to get in there on Thursday or Friday,
I
Emerson.
also did no raid testing this week. Our group just kind of like is petered out. People not really showing up, which is it's 2 weeks to the new tier. People will show up for
Yeah,
the new tier. They're not as interested in doing the mythic testing, especially because one of these is a retest. It is a retest of Zskarn, however you want to say
yep.
it. It's quite a name. Zskarn. Have fun.
Z is always silent. Z is always silent in those names,
Oh, so
by the
it's
way.
Skarner.
Yep. Skarnarn or
Um,
Skaranarn.
uh,
Adding syllables now.
but that one's a retest. Honestly, more of the same. That's the trap boss, and it's still really janky, but at the very least, there's like progress. Based on what I saw, some of the timing overlaps on Mythic are much less impossible. Um, Not so many things like getting knocked back as a raid group in the middle of the peak of the like area denial that one shots you with 5 million damage. So that was a fun overlap that no longer happens.
Yeah.
Um, there's still some stuff that needs to be sorted out with that fight, I think. Uh, I saw a few that got the boss to like 50%. There's just like it puts random traps out, and it's actually this boss and the other one that they tested on Thursday, Magmorax, have a very similar problem, which is that the like one of the fundamentals of the fight is controlling some kind of area denial, positioning it correctly, and that's kind of like the main thing that you do in the fight is positioning these area denial effects. On Magmorax, it is lava puddles. On Zskarn, um, it is the traps, and both of them also have random spawns. And that just completely breaks your ability to like execute a strategy, um,
Uh,
with the kind of penalty that you get from having these random spawns. This isn't like it's very long time been a thing that like on Painsmith you had the fire puddles, and like 90% of them were baited on players, and then 10% of them were targeted randomly, but it was okay.
right.
It wasn't permanent. Sometimes you get a couple that were in bad positions, and you would just have to like move around them, and it was okay. It wasn't like ideal, and occasionally, very occasionally, you could get a really, really bad one, and it would just kill somebody, and that would be a problem. These ones are permanent until you use one of the fight mechanics to deal with it. And actually, one of the mythic changes for Magmorax is that you can't completely remove the area denial effect. So Magmorax, for those that haven't looked at the fight, is a lava hydra, and he puts out fire puddles on people. They go and they drop them. They're actually really big fire puddles, lots of space taken up by these. But you can go and you can soak them to reduce the size, and on heroic and below, you can actually make them go away entirely. Um,
Mhm.
if you don't make them go away entirely, they do gradually get larger again, so you actually do want to fully consume them. On Mythic, you can't make them go away entirely. Um,
Gotcha.
so
Is it just that like you can soak them down to like their smallest section,
yeah,
or
and then they
okay,
just don't shrink any further.
yeah,
But then they will start growing back.
growing, yeah, gotcha.
Um, so it's like a there is a harden rage on the boss, uh, and the harden rage on the boss is shorter if he ever touches a lava puddle, and lava puddles can spawn underneath him, the random ones.
Nice, nice.
And so that's like on prog, that's probably just an instant wipe if that happens.
Right, yeah,
So
yeah,
that's obviously a problem, but then there's other things that aren't necessarily like instant wipe tier that just make it dramatically harder depending on your RNG. Like if you have a plan for how you're going to move the boss around the room, and then a puddle spawns in front of you where you're planning to go, now suddenly you have to do something much harder because the boss also has a huge knockback that he's going to do. You have to move around. You have to manage to knock back while not getting knocked off the platform, not having other people knocked back into the fire puddle. This is all kinds of a mess.
right,
Um,
yeah,
and similar thing with Zskarn. Like you have the random quote unquote. They are baited on players, but because of the golems, you can't really have players hard stack. People have to move around. Um, you have the random traps, and you don't really get enough. Like the first set of them comes before you get golems, and then it kind of like, oh, also there's two random traps on Mythic up from one on Heroic, which feels like a mistake. Like I think it's intentional, but I think it's a mistake to do that. Um,
fair enough.
and it just kind of like I just watched a bunch of people where they would have like a particularly bad random spawn, and everybody would have to run through the traps to get away from the like the fire cones that are going to do 5 million damage and kill you, and it just kind of like die to having multiple stacks of the dot that the traps put out, and that just kind of sucks.
Well,
Um,
well,
that just kind of sucks, and it's like in a situation where they just didn't have more of the either more of the golem things, like when you kill the golems, you get a thing to disarm a trap, which removes it, and so that's how you kind of deal with the area denial. They didn't have any more to use, or there wasn't enough time in between the traps spawning and having to get out for these big area denial effects, and so it's just like those two bosses both feel like they would be significantly less frustrating if they didn't have these random spawns. They might be.
Yeah.
I don't think Magmorax needs the random spawn at all. Just on a complexity level, I don't think it needs it at all. Like, I don't think it needs it at all. If you need something special for Mythic, like, make it so that one of the puddles that it puts out is just, like, bigger. Like, one player gets a bigger puddle. Easy game. Zskarn, I actually think might be missing something if there were no random traps, but I don't know.
Yeah.
I am not an encounter designer. I feel like there would be something missing there if all of the traps were completely deterministic.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. Um, any other highlights? The only thing I know, and I don't know if it was one of the Friday bosses. I think it was Echoes or Echo of Neltharion
Mm-hmm.
as a fun line of sight mechanic that all my healer friends love. We love line of sight mechanics.
Yeah, I mean,
So
it's
yeah. So that's the only thing I know about the raid testing is that I think it's Echo has a fun line of sight mechanic, which
there's like there's
stop it. Stop.
there's
Sorry.
there are two bosses on Friday. Assault of the Zskarn, which is the Hellfire Assault boss, which
Yeah.
I didn't test on Mythic, but it actually seemed fine on Heroic. I actually heard a lot of really positive things about it, which is impressive for a Hellfire Assault boss. Um, so
Fair enough. Fair
you
enough.
know, maybe they finally figured it out. It did seem like it seemed fine on here, so I'm not surprised. Well, not that surprised. Echo of Neltharion, though, the highlight from this is if you did this on heroic, um, that it would do the class calls. It would call an entire class. It would corrupt them at once, and it was actually bugged on heroic. You couldn't actually progress past phase 2 really. Um, but it was just blatantly obvious from heroic testing how horribly that was going to go. So they removed it. Now it just picks random targets to, just like, there's maybe a little bit of a flavor loss from not having the class call mechanic, but with the way that they tune these bosses, they can't make it just a nice fun mechanic because it's boss number 8 out of 9.
Yeah.
If this were
Yeah.
boss number 1, like a Rathian kind of first boss of Ny'alotha style thing or a Terragru kind of thing, they could totally include the class calls and just like not worry about them being super balanced and just not make them super punishing. But because it's the penultimate boss of the raid tier,
Yeah, they can't.
they with the way that they have constructed Mythic as a difficulty, they are not capable of having it be this like insanely high variance. Sometime it just kills you kind of mechanic because it will just kill you.
Yeah. Yeah.
um, yeah, there is a line of sight thing in phase 3. Although I didn't see any phase 3 testing, I might have just been watching the wrong streams. I don't think there's any actual like you need to be out of line of sight of this mechanics in the first 2 phases, but I don't remember. They changed a bunch on this fight, so
Yeah.
it could have changed. But there's nothing as far as I know, it's nothing like Ajara or the Jailer level of like line of sight mechanics. It's more like Algalon, where you went down into the at least in phase 3, it's more like Algalon, where you go into the like alternate dimension to escape the Big Bang. Um, and it's like that. Like you go into this other dimension, and the boss just doesn't kill you, and then you come back out.
Gotcha. Yeah. Yeah. I think the annoying part that some people are saying is that like there's only certain people that have to do that, and the problem is they will also be low from getting damaged or having some sort of debuff
Mm-hmm.
on them. So once they jump, they're essentially out of line of sight, so they can't be healed. Although
Okay.
they're still in range on your rate frames, which
Yeah.
is the bigger issue.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's the only annoying part I'd say is like they need to add like line of sight as like something you can change your raid frames for, and then it'll probably be fine. But I think that's a healer issue. It's not just specific to us. So, um, well, cool. Well, I mean, honestly, uh, raid testing is winding down. We only have what 2 more weeks. I don't know if there's any testing at the end of this week. I forget the big
There's
schedule, but I
testing
think
next
there's
week.
yeah, I think
There's
they're testing right up to launch, right?
Raid Finder right up to launch.
Gotcha.
April 28th, which is the week right before 10.1 releases, they are doing the final wing of LFR testing.
Yeah.
Next week, they are doing 2 more Mythic tests on Friday, at least per the published schedule. They have not announced which bosses, but so there is like a chance that it could end up being a Thursday plus Friday test again. Um, but then they're also next weekend, Raid Finder will be open and with one of the other wings.
Yeah. Nice, nice. Well, let's move a little bit forward. Blizzard also posted a bunch of 10.1 like development notes like they typically do on a weekly basis. A bunch of tuning to classes and some crafted tuning. No tuning to monks that or sorry, there was
Well,
one major thing to monks, I guess, or not major,
two
but
major things.
two. Okay. So I'll go to the Mistweaver one first.
Yeah, yeah,
So Feline Stomp had its cooldown reduced by 10 seconds, which in the grand scheme of things, not the biggest deal. You are typically resetting Feline Stomp well before its typical cooldown. What this does though is this does sort of alleviate the issue that most people have found when they play Feline, which is you hit Feline Stomp and your tank immediately starts running every mob to the opposite side of whatever room you're in or into
yeah.
the next pack.
And that's not
And
like. Sorry, go ahead.
no, I was gonna say, so like that's the biggest complaint. This just reduces, I guess, the time you're spent without it. I would say that you can alleviate that slightly. I mean, casting Chi Burst at a group of mobs or just at your group typically is an instant reset for Feline, particularly as a Mistweaver. So you can always rely on that. Um, but yeah, this is probably the sort of only really sucks if like you literally have hit it and then your tank starts moving immediately. So
Yeah, there's like a player skill thing in general with Phalanx Stomp of like knowing what mechanics are coming up and knowing that like, hey, this thing is gonna force me to move. Let me not push Phalanx Stomp for a couple seconds so that I can move for the mechanic and then I can stay at my Phalanx so I can fish for a reset. But you
yeah,
can't play around your tank just yeeting things across the room. If you're
yeah.
playing with a pug, they might just do it for no reason, and you can't control that.
Exactly. Yeah, you can't stop them. So, but yeah,
Yeah.
no, it was I'm sorry.
Oh, the other change was for
Yes.
Windwalkers for their 4-set bonus. So I mentioned last
Oh.
week that the 4-set bonus was buffing all shadow and fire damage,
Yep.
which was making certain things like Manic Grief Torch and Flaming Cowl and the Aeronog Ring and the Onyx Analyte. Just like on and on and on.
Way too good.
Very strong. Very good. Um, Anyway, they made the effect of the 4-set bonus a whitelist, where it now only buffs the 2-set, which means Windwalker is back in the dumpster. I mean, it's not like bad, but it is. They were getting a lot of power from being able to get, Manic Grief Torch at 40% increased damage. That's pretty powerful.
Yeah. Yeah.
uh, so yeah, that happened. We'll see what else happens of the remainder of testing. The
Yeah.
other, I think, probably more significant thing that they changed across everybody, not just a monk thing. Leech rating now gives 25% less leech.
Yeah.
Uh, that's pretty significant. I
That's a huge reduction. Yeah. I'd still say like so. I don't know how tanks and I know that tanks and DPS don't like consider Leech as amazing as some of your other secondaries, right? Like
right,
I think it's valued less in that world. But for healers, like Leech is such an amazing stat, primarily because it procs off everything we do. It's
Right.
like essentially like it's not just damage you do, but any healing you do. And that includes like hot healing and like just general spread healing, all that fun stuff. So like leech is an extremely strong tool to like essentially self heal yourself and you waste
As a
sort of
result
less
of healing your
globals.
group.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you waste less like globals on yourself, less time casting anything on yourself. Everything can be spread to your group, and then you can feel as safe because you have, a fair amount of leech. So it's funny, the note on this basically says like they want to avoid marginalizing the importance of the healer role to a group survival. And so they're reducing it that way, which is funny because I don't know. I mean, I'm assuming in like certain comps where you're running zero healers or like low healers, your teams are running a lot of leech. We saw that. I mean, we saw that on bosses where like certain items that provide healing or health are sometimes used to basically remove a healer from the fight so you can do more
Yeah.
damage. Like Star Augur in Nighthold is like a perfect example of running Pride as. Like I think the group that two healed it ran Pride as
Yeah.
just because of the healing, right? So there are cases where that happens, but like honestly, nerfing Leech is like you're nerfing it what I would consider generally a healer stat. And like
Yeah. So I
it
pulled up
just kind of
our
sucks.
I pulled up our Razageth logs, right? And I guess I should probably on healers somehow. I'm not going to right now.
Yeah.
That's too much effort. Um, so our number one, if you break down healing by ability, which is obviously like your like per class spells are going to be lower because we have, at least in our most recent Razkill, have one of each spec, except for Druid where we have two. But our number one overall healing comes from Primordial Stones.
It's so funny.
Then it's
It's so funny.
that's 9% of total healing done to the group. Um, then there's Rejuvenation. Then there's Wild Growth, and then there's Leech. Leech clocking in at 6%. Almost all of which is on the four healers, and then a Havoc Demon Hunter that just has a bunch of Leech for free because that's like a Demon Hunter.
Yep.
Um, and then the rest of it is just like a bunch of random people just like getting, you know, 2 health bars, 3 health bars back over the course of a 10-minute, 12-minute fight. Which is not particularly impressive as far as Leech goes. Like, this is obviously we were not building around Leech.
Right.
Um, this is not something where we are trying to go, oh, let's drop a healer and just everybody equips their match max Leech set. God, I can't talk. Um,
Right.
I don't know this tertiaries are so hard to like stack just
Oh
naturally.
yeah.
It seems kind of weird, especially when honestly part of the problem right now is the Onyx ring and everybody's best combo for DPS involving the Desirous Bloodstone. Like Desirous Bloodstone was almost 2.5% of all healing done in our Razkill. Spread
So
across,
funny.
like the how many people? Not even half the raid running it. Uh,
Yeah.
and I that did more healing than Leech.
Right, exactly,
If you exclude
exactly.
healers, who get a lot more from Leech and are
Right.
like
Yeah,
the
true. That's
like
true.
the healers aren't running Desirous Bloodstone, so that's like a fairly apples to apples comparison. Uh,
Right.
we get more healing from Desirous Bloodstone. Which again, like we're not building around it, but it's just like this is deterministic. You can just equip Desirous Bloodstone. So I
Right.
don't know. It seems like maybe the Leech thing is a little bit of an overreaction to the fact that we currently have the Onyx Amulet.
Yeah, which is probably propping up just self-healing much more than
Yeah,
leeches, I'd say. So, yeah, I mean, well, yeah, this honestly feels like much more of a like this will impact healers much more than it will
yeah.
like DPS or tanks in the long run, which sucks, but I mean, it just means that have to spend a little bit more mana over the course of a fight on
Healing yourself.
healing ourselves, yeah. Or just, I mean, or just other healers healing us, right? Like if you think about it from a raid environment point of view, it's like Leech is so good too because you essentially can remove looking at your healer bars. for most part of that healer group that you
Yeah.
have, because we'll all generally be high enough, um, just from Leech in in general. So, um, but yeah, no, it's interesting that that change. I don't know why. I mean, the thought process, I guess, is makes sense. Blizzard definitely has more data than all of us, but
Yeah.
I just in practice, I don't see it that way. So
Right. Like the protection paladin nerf to Hand of the Protector, I understand because that's like
yeah,
obviously very powerful. Leech didn't really strike me as that, and if they wanted to do something that was just targeted at PS, they honestly could have just nerfed the healing of Desirous Bloodstone by like half, and nobody would have cared. They're playing it for DPS.
yeah, yeah, exactly, exactly. So yeah, we'll see what it does. I honestly, I don't think, just sort of to wrap this up, I don't think it changes the value. Like it definitely, well, it definitely changes the value of Leech as you go, as you sort of change item levels or go up through item levels. Meaning, like, I don't know what the new conversion will be, but you'll basically be able to upgrade and drop Leech at a lower item level difference threshold than you do today. But Leech is still very strong. So like if you get a piece with Leech and you have a piece without Leech, you will equip the Leech piece. Similarly, if you get a piece with Avoidance, um, and Leech, you will put the Leech piece over the Avoidance piece, right? If they're the
Yeah,
same. So
yeah.
um,
For healers, yeah,
for healers, sorry, for specifically healers, yeah.
yeah,
Um, so yeah, so that is the I guess that's the fun PTR notes for this week. So that's going live in 10.1 in a couple weeks. So we'll see how that plays out. So
yeah.
cool. So moving in, I guess, to our main topic, which is just a bunch of Mythic Plus stuff that they've done this week. It's a, I mean, it's not a ton, but it's a fair amount we can talk through. So first up on the new affixes. So we've got 3 new affixes coming in, so people remember. It's Entangling, not that bad of an affix if your name's Anomoly. Terrible, awful affix if your name is Emallson, so
They
you pick
nerfed
a
it.
side.
They nerfed it.
They did nerf it. You have an Afflicted, and then you have Incorporeal. So Afflicted and Corporeal, not much of a difference. The only big thing, I guess, with Incorporeal is the mobs will despawn when you finish combat with the pack. So
Yep.
if you're out of combat with the pack of mobs, all your Incorporeal mobs that are still alive will despawn, and you can move forward, which is, I think, a good quality of life change.
Yeah. So
The big one, I'm
that was
sorry.
specifically a problem because unlike Spiteful, which you can just like turn around. I mean, Spiteful honestly also should despawn when you're out of combat with all non-spiteful things. Like, very not fond memories of Azure Vaults and what's the Bastion anyway of like sitting there waiting at the teleporter for us to finish. Like we all ran off assuming the Spiteful would die, and then the Spiteful didn't die, and we're just AFK at the teleporter waiting for it to be dead.
Yeah,
The problem with Incorporeal is you couldn't damage them, you just had to wait for the time out. So if they spawned right before you finish the pack, you just had to wait 20 seconds.
exactly. Yeah, yeah. Um, but so now they despawn, which is good. So the big change is to Entangling. So first they reduced the slow percentage. It's now only 30% slow from 50.
This is a very big change. Like it's still 30% right, but they almost cut the slow in half.
Yeah. Yeah, which is good. And then it came with the new sound and visual animation. The visual animation is actually very, very good, I'd say. Basically puts a ring around your character. And then once you basically cross the threshold of that perimeter, we'll say, of the ring, entangling drops right from you, and
Yeah.
you can move freely. So it's very big, very noticeable, although it is green, which is concerning, particularly when we think about some of the dungeons. Actually, it's really only one, Brackenhide, whatever that Bracken one
Yeah,
is.
Brackenhide's more brown than anything else.
Well, brown and green, they're close if you're
Yeah.
colorblind.
Okay,
But
that's
yeah,
actually really, really valid.
I made that up, by the way. I don't know if you can be brown, green, colorblind.
I mean, you can't, but when you can't see green very well, it ends up being like when you the different forms of color blindness typically um have one or more colors that uh can't fully see, and ends up appearing more gray or brownish depending on the intensity and the. So that is
Yeah.
actually like that is actually I just did some testing on. I'm not colorblind, but if you go through the color blindness like testing things, that they can filter out the colors that you would not be able to see or not be able like convert them into the colors you would see them as with different
Gotcha.
forms of. And that's one of the things that I noticed is uh, well, red is one that is common. Red is either a grayish color, brownish color.
Right.
So
Yeah. But I guess other than the color, it's definitely a good new visual animation to sort of show how far you have to move to get out of the slow to break it, the vines or
also,
whatever.
just the fact that there's a big circle around you now makes it easier to tell because it spawns directly underneath you. And so what would happen a lot is if you were tanking and all the mobs are also on top of you, you just wouldn't be able to see the thing underneath all of the mobs. Similar problems with
Exactly.
melee. Ranged would have an easier time, but it was still like very just not great. But now it's much easier to tell. The nice, bright green that you can see. I'm interested in seeing what it looks like with the colorblind options now that you. Um,
Yeah.
but also a sound effect, which is going to be probably the best thing for me because like sound cues are. That's how
Yeah.
I rely on. I will say that when I did my entangling testing, I did one of my keys on a DK, one of my keys on on monk. And on DK, there's a passive that means you cannot be slowed below 70% movement speed. So if you're not given this speed boost, that basically was just playing with new entangling minus the visual and sound effects. And that slow was not nearly as bad as it was on monk. Monk, you could
Right. Yeah.
DK like when you moved you would notice it, but it was not nearly as bad. And again, that's what happens when you cut the slow almost in half.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's fair. Um, so yeah, so it sounds like they're listening to feedback on those debuffs and or those sorry affixes. So definitely easier to see this time around and hopefully a little bit easier to deal with.
Yeah. I suspect Magmorax is still going to be a major problem, but I think this reduces the set of like possible things that just instantly kill you with entangling from by like a lot. Like they cut the slow in half, that's going to make a lot of mechanics easier.
Right. Yeah. Cool. And I guess the only other thing we did skip just in the new affix changes was afflicted. They stop scaling, their health stops scaling, sorry, after keystone level 20. So basically, as you get really high up there, your afflicted mobs will no longer scale indefinitely. They scaling stops at 20 for them. So
Yeah.
still
Both of
change.
these affixes currently have the old explosive problem of spawning way too many mobs
Yeah.
in pulls that already have a lot of mobs, which A gives you nameplate problems, and B just means that like, okay, afflicted, if there's one afflicted, is not a problem. When there's 10, you just physically do not have the dispels to deal with that because dispels have a cooldown.
Right. Exactly. Exactly. Yeah.
So that's and it's like to some degree that's like a don't pull big kind of solution, but that's not really practically a solution because there are things like in Freehold where you just have a bunch of mobs and you could pull them all individually in theory, but in practice you can't because if you do, you will just not make the timer unless you massively
Exactly.
overgear it, right?
Right. Yeah.
But
Yeah.
that's a like both of these could use a solid like no more than two will ever spawn kind of deal tacked on them, two or three, just like really just like kill that problem. We dealt with it enough with
Yeah. No, they need the same sort of limit that they had on
at
explosive, but we'll get there. We'll
Yeah.
get there. One more little mini thing, and then we'll talk about explosives. So,
Okay.
yeah. So one other thing, in raging, or sorry, raging, not enraging, but raging,
Yes.
did have a fun new interaction that we saw this week during testing, which was mobs that were raging, were
Two things.
not able to be interrupted.
Two things. They changed raging, which now when they rage, instead of doing 50% increased damage,
Oh,
they
right, right, right.
they are crowd control immune. Now that went live. We didn't know because crowd control immunity can mean a lot of things. They even
Yep.
in Mythic Plus affixes, some of them have meant you can't kick them. Some of them haven't meant you can't kick them. Like it's just like arbitrary. So we had to just test it and find out. People tested it. It meant you couldn't kick them, which was a huge problem because you would just like you could imagine from the current season dungeons, like imagine a raging water element, Temple of the Jade Serpent,
Yeah.
or sorry, water speaker in Temple of the Jade Serpent that's got the tidal burst cast, and if you can't kick it, it kills you. Like not just you, like kills your group.
Yeah.
Um, so that would be a problem, and uh,
It's like,
it's just a slight problem. Anyway, it took all of like 30 minutes for Blizzard to come out and say we're changing it so that they can now be interrupted. All the other CCs still won't work, but interrupts will work again.
which is good, which is a good change. Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Honestly, like so this version of Raging is much, much, much better if you are in a pug and not doing high keys. Because what it means
yeah.
is you're not going to accidentally rage the entire pack at once and your rando pug tank that, barely has a shield equipped is going to get one shot. Like that's a thing
Yeah.
that happened. Like I did a bunch of pugging on my mage, saw it happen over and over again. We would like have people just hit their CDs and just cleave everything, and then the whole pack hits. Rage special. We don't have an enraged dispel. Tank's not ready for it. Everybody's blowing their cooldown, so everybody's doing like piddly damage at the end, and so the
Exactly.
tank just dies. Um,
Yeah.
Now it's dangerous, but it's actually more dangerous to the whole group for that to happen. But again, like some mobs, it just isn't an issue one. So the most dangerous raging mobs before were the ones that just like knew tank, or
Right. Right.
had
Right.
had casts or dots that would go out. Like there's a few different mobs that put out dots on non-tank players that would benefit from raging, and so they would get like the cats in Court of Stars, like raging cats. That dot is
Oh
scary.
yeah.
Um, those won't randomly like one shot anymore too, which is nice. You can no longer like grip cancel or stun cancel or para cancel the cat jump when they're raging, but
Right.
your like plus 16 pug is not doing that anyway.
Yeah. I can see like certain packs. This will be somewhat of an issue.
Yeah,
Um, Particularly ones that like have like I'm thinking. I know Quarter Stars is leaving, so I got to think of new dungeons. But like the impacts in Quarter Stars,
yeah,
having those all enraged at the same time, they still do a ton of
yeah.
damage. Um, so yeah, but I mean, this is in general. I also agree with you. This is probably a better affix in general. To be
Yeah,
this way. Plus, this only hits at level 14, so like
yeah.
you're playing with somewhat, we'll say, people who maybe are a little bit above average, if they're doing a key like that. So
Um, but yeah, I think this is going to be harder for high keys,
yeah.
because in high keys you can kind of rely on your tank to just not get murdered by raging.
Mhm.
Um, and so you're basically just left with the few mobs that you couldn't CC or kill or just play with an enraged dispel. Um,
Right.
uh, so like you think of raging cats on a plus 17 fortified, right? In a random pug, those cats are just going to kill people. Sometimes they'll kill multiple people before they actually die, and that's just like a fact of life right now.
Right.
Um, you do it in a plus 22, even a plus 22 pug, you're probably be playing with an enraged dispel, so they probably just know the cat is dangerous. As soon as it gets the enraged buff, it gets dispelled,
Exactly.
and it's
Yeah.
just not an issue.
Right. Yeah. So yeah, hopefully, I mean, yeah, I guess in that sort of environment, it'd be easier because you don't have those like one or two hits that might kill your tank, and now you can still enrage the spell and
Yeah.
and excuse me, and get the debuff off the mob so you can still stun it maybe. But yeah, so that's the raging change, we'll say. I think we both agree solid change. The next change, which I also would agree is a solid change, is explosive is being retired for season 2. Um After many iterations and one interesting, I don't know if you saw this, but there
The
was one
comment,
interesting
yeah.
affix. No, not the comment, but
Oh,
there was one interesting affix that was live for about an hour or two at the start of Mythic Plus testing. But we'll talk about it. So let's get
oh,
through this.
okay,
But
yeah, yeah.
so explosive retired, being replaced by volcanic. I didn't see the blue pose comment on this. But
I don't
but
think there
yeah,
was one.
basically,
It's just
yeah,
like, okay, so volcanic is storming but for ranged.
yep,
Like that's storming is volcanic but for melee. That's what the those two effects. That's just what they are.
uh huh,
Um, explosive. They tried multiple iterations and didn't find anything that actually like stopped making it a healer affix.
yeah,
Even with the nerfed HP, it like kind of still like it became just a non-affix. Um, so they just like, okay, you know what? Volcanic can come back. It's very inoffensive. People like Volcanic is generally regarded as a pretty easy fix. It's not particularly annoying or frustrating. Um,
right,
like in terms of like storming versus Volcanic, Volcanic is the better fix. Like just like design wise, it's the better fix. Storming sucks.
right.
Come at me.
Agreed, agreed.
Um, but yeah, I mean, explosive is dead and gone, and
Yeah,
I'm I'm very okay with that.
yeah. Yeah, there was for a brief moment. I don't know how long this lasted, but for about an hour or two, there was a new affix. They didn't have a name for it, but it was essentially it spawned volcanic like balls, but instead they put shields on the mobs.
Oh, that actually went
Uh,
live.
yeah, it went live for like probably like an hour or two, and then they quickly, pulled it down, and Volcanic was like the replacement. But yeah,
Yeah,
they it seemed like they were continuing to test with like trying to make Volcanic just not a healer affix, but
I mean explosive.
um or sorry, explosive. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
not a healer affix, but
And
weren't
like
able to make it work. So
I suspect what's going on is they know explosive is a problem. They haven't found a solution, and they're running out of time. So the solution for now is put in a fix that we know is fine. It isn't problematic, and just ship it, and then they
yeah,
can figure it out for season 3.
exactly. Yeah, which I mean,
Which is to
this
say,
is sort.
I expect to see some explosive variant come back for season 3.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, I think this is sort of the we're seeing the effects of the I wouldn't say accelerated like development, but like we're seeing the effects of them holding true to a schedule, right?
Yeah,
Of saying like, hey, we need this patch out. This point, we have a very set amount of content we want to release. So it's not perfect, but it's passable.
and
Which
frankly,
sorry.
the affix pool without explosive is better than the affix pool with explosive,
No, I'd
at
agree.
least in its current form. So, I'll take it.
Yeah. No, I would agree. I mean, I think it's definitely a volcanic, like you mentioned, less intrusive, a little bit easier to deal with at the end of the day than explosive was. But um, I think they combine volcanic with something else, and maybe it becomes more difficult to work with, right? Like
I
so.
think so. I One of the things that was interesting about Nihilotha as a raid tier is how um, corruption was just this persistent extra mechanic that was present throughout the raid. You just had the corruption effects, the slow, the eyeball, the thing from beyond, that would spawn that you had to deal with, and that layered onto the
Uh,
raid felt like it was designed with fewer mechanics so that you could push corruption a little bit to be that extra mechanic and risk reward thing. Um, and volcanic very much feels like it would fit in that model where like the encounter just has a little bit less mechanical complexity, but you have volcanic in there, and now it's fine.
right.
And some of these other fixes don't fit that; they're too complex, or um, there's inconsistency in the like the complexity of the encounters, which is a
Uh-huh.
problem in Mythic Plus, right? You have the like we had the big conversation before about like the complexity of Thrash and Dragonflight dungeons versus like these Legion dungeons.
Yeah.
And so that's the kind of thing where like adding some of these more complicated mechanics into Legion dungeons is fine because the trash just isn't as complicated. But adding them into Dragonflight dungeons is like can be overwhelming because of it being more complicated. And so like I'm kind of like pretty happy that just volcanic isn't very complicated. It forces you to react and it will punish you if you don't. Even if it doesn't kill you, the like knocking you in the air is pretty bad for your health in general, bad for your damage for sure. So it's like I honestly I think it would be better if more affixes were like volcanic tier.
That's fair. Yeah. I just um yeah. I I don't like I get I get that that kind of is like the nice way of putting like affixes are sort of something on top of the existing dungeon, and
Right.
in the current way the trash like the current way dungeons work is they are generally more complex. So like adding additional complexity on top of already complex trash or just like, you know, that type of difficulty just seems like crazy. But yeah, maybe that's where I'm hard stuck is I don't push Mythic Plus, right? So like for me, like early season is like getting my 15s done, getting at least like base. I know it's not base item level loot anymore, but it's like good enough to get us into Mythic, right? Where I'll replace
Right.
pieces with Mythic grade stuff. And and for me, like the affixes never become super annoying like that, we'll say, or like become sort of like a mechanic on top of an already difficult pull.
Yeah.
That's I'm probably out of touch there because like to me, like volcanic or explosive, while explosive is annoying, right?
Yeah.
Like you just deal with it and you move through the dungeon, right? But like I think as you get to your point, like the problem is as you get higher in 20s, in the 20 range, like explosive was like has as much health as a mom in a pack, so now you're literally never going to catch up and push through that
Yeah.
pack.
And like I
And
think explosive as it is currently on live right now is only a problem in as much as the UI just can't handle it. Like the
yeah,
nameplate
and that
stuff
too,
just
yeah.
can't handle it.
Yeah.
Um like other than that, I mean obviously it's killer effect. It's
Yeah.
not that complicated. It's just the UI issues. But then like the complicated ones are things like afflicted right now. Um is much more like okay, you not only have this thing, you have to find it, you have to either heal it a pretty significant amount, or you have to dispel it. You have to be balancing your dispels with the dispels that are required for the group. Like you can imagine Balakar Khan that has the required dispel on the tank that if you don't do it, he dies.
Right.
Um, and then an afflicted spawns, and if you just autopilot dispel the afflicted, and you go, oh no, tank's gonna die now.
Exactly.
That's
Exactly.
that's like not a thing that you have to think about. Like there's no real thought process with explosive beyond like, oh, there's an explosive up, it needs to die.
Right, right, right.
There's not too much of a trade off there. I don't know. I guess like volcanic is like or explosive. I think is not much more complex than volcanic. It's just that volcanic doesn't have any UI issues at all.
Right. It's like, can you stare at your feet,
Yeah,
move or not?
yeah,
Which, yeah, if you're in my 15 to lever keys, most people can't stare at their feet and move. Uh, they have difficulty like casting spells and moving. So
I mean, I'm not gonna lie. I have been punished for trying to finish a hardcast pyro before volcanic goes off a few times.
yeah,
Um, and let me tell you, being 3.4 seconds into a 3.5 second long cast, and then getting knocked in the air, losing your Sun King's blessing, and then you cry because you're not doing anything else with your life.
yeah, yeah. That is yeah, that is rough. So um,
There are a couple of other changes that go in here. We got a slate of like health pools on things no longer scaling past keystone level 20 for affix mechanics. So afflicted health, like we mentioned, you can heal them. That no longer scales past 20, so it won't become like completely unhealable in higher keys. Which means at least like you probably are going to be dispelling them in high keys anyway, but it at least means that you don't only have the option to.
Right, right.
Spiteful, the health and damage don't scale past 20. That is actually a problem, because like on a 20, Spiteful on plate does like 60% of your DPS's health with a hit, 60 to 70%. So it's a lot. But if you then go up to a 23, it just kills you instantly.
Right.
And it's a lower threshold for cloth. Like cloth is like a 22. It just, if you ever get hit. So that's gonna like even out that level of maybe it's a little bit higher than I don't know, I'm like ballparking numbers, but there is a point that is reachable right now that these spiteful shades will just one shot you if they touch you. And so by capping them, that no longer happens. They also nerfed their melee damage by 10% on Spiteful,
Uh-huh.
which is not unwelcome. It is currently Spiteful Week, so if you want to really remember how frustrating Spiteful can be, go play some keys. Not that
Nice,
bad,
nice.
but it is no good like sitting there trying like killed all the trash and you're like, okay, time to go to the next pack. Let's mount up. Oh wait, we can't. Let's turn around and kill some Spiteful.
Yeah, God, yeah.
And then bolstering. This is one of the best affix changes. Like besides, I think the raging change is probably the best one. But
Right.
bolstering no longer increases the health of bolstered creatures. It was increasing both health and damage. Now it only increases their damage. The problem that you would run into is if you were the old version of bolstering, where it was permanent until you reset. Um, you would end up with a mob that was at like 10% health, but that 10% would be more health than it initially had, sometimes by a lot. And so that pretty frequently caused problems. So at some point during Shadowlands, they switched it to the current version where it is, um, it, it's a stacking buff still, but it's temporary and it'll. So at the very least, like it may have a like literally a billion health, but you can go like run around for 20 seconds. The stacks will fall off, and you
Right, right, right.
can. Now you can just kill it. You might still have to run around because it's got it too many bolstering stacks and it'll kill your tank. But it's no longer functioning like extra health percent like this on mobs is basically like giving them damage reduction. And if you
Yeah.
layer on like a 50% health increase, that's like giving the mob a 30% damage reduction. And if it's more than that, if you give a mob 10 stacks, now they're at 50% damage.
Right, 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 right.
And it gets worse from there. So um, that's like a pretty good change. It's one of those things too where if you're smart, you can play around it, you can pull around it. You not like that's a big thing in hierarchies is knowing what the levels of mob HP are. Pull something together that everything has the same level of HP, and you just cleave them all down and they all die at the same time. Or if one gets Omega bolstered, it gets Omega bolstered with 50k health,
Right, right, right.
and it's fine. Um, Whereas in like low pug keys, you just like YOLO pull stuff. If one mob is like 3 times the health of everything else, and then gets 10 stacks of bolstering on top of it.
Yeah. And then then you're just sitting there for 20 minutes, like
Yeah,
slowly whittling that thing down. It's
yeah,
just
yeah.
awful. Awful. Um yeah, so that's the bolstering thing, which I think is nice. And then Sanguine, I think it was the final update. Sanguine got a change, which was the puddles now only last 12 seconds instead of 20, which is absolutely massive. Just awesome. Just
Again,
awesome.
almost cutting the duration in half. I wonder what motivated this. Like we don't have any like Waycrest Manor
Yeah.
style dungeons right now where
Yeah.
Sanguine is like a huge problem. Like Sanguine was a 1 minute duration in BFA. The Waycrest Manor happened and it got
And
nerfed to
they want
20
that.
seconds.
Yeah. Jeez.
Like I
Aggressive.
guess Neltharion is a little bit of a problem with Sanguine. Like the corridors are not that narrow, but you're doing a lot of like pulling the right side of a corridor and avoiding the left
Right.
side. So if you have Sanguine in the right, that like forces you into the left, and then you take a ton of extra time. So maybe it's that one, maybe it's Vortex Pinnacle, but the platforms on Vortex Pinnacle are like pretty spacious. I'm just not sure like what prompted the change, other than that like I don't know. The biggest frustration that I have with Sanguine, and maybe I'm like somewhat uniquely positioned as a tank that does like not high keys, but uh I do okay.
Yeah.
And the most frustrating thing is when you have a mob that like you have two mobs that are stacked and you're moving, so it's moving and it gets out of sanguine as soon as the other one dies, and then it just gets like 90% of the way out and it plants and does a long cast.
Right. Yeah.
And that's the most frustrating thing, where it just like plants and regains all its health.
Exactly. Yeah, that is the absolute worst.
And the duration change here doesn't change that. So I'm not exactly sure what prompted this
Yikes.
change, but I guess I'm not gonna like look too unkindly on it.
Yay! Segment nerfs. Woo! Woo!
Yeah. So yeah. Honestly, like despite the whole mess of the new affixes being kind of not great, um,
Right.
I am really glad that they are actually doing some pretty major looking at the Mythic Plus affixes. It is long.
Yeah. No, I think they're realizing that is that like the yeah, like the original affixes were for like a point in time, and like they've changed classes, they've changed dungeon design since then.
Yeah.
So it's like they just need to go back and like
Uh,
figure out what they're doing.
And I think a lot of this like stuff that they're doing now with these affixes was time that had been taken up by seasonal affixes. Like there's only so much time they've got for
Right.
each patch. Seasonal affixes take time. Like it's not just assets time or coding time or whatever, it's design time to figure out what the fundamental design of this is. Then that design time can be spent on looking at existing affixes and saying, okay, there are frustrations that people have with these, less frustrating to play better.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not looking forward to some of these new affixes still. Entangling is much less bad. Uh, hope that they cap spawns of incorporeal and afflict. Honestly, half just for UI reasons. But yeah, on the whole, like this is a good direction. This is still a good direction.
Yeah, no, I would agree. Just across the board on all their changes to Mythic Plus. I mean, it might. I don't think this is going to materially make me jump back into doing it beyond just the first couple weeks, and
Yeah,
well, really until I get KSM, and then I'll pretty much sort of quit Mythic Plus. Um, but no, I think in general these are hopefully good changes because you're now contending with older affixes plus the dungeons changing every time you go in or every season, right? So there's
yeah,
there's a new set of dungeons that show up. So there's a lot of change season to season. So I think making the affixes like less of the focal point and more the difference being the new dungeons, I think is a good point that they're
yeah,
trying to do. So
yeah. Uh,
yeah,
good.
yeah,
But I think that that's gonna be it for the show today. Uh, if
awesome.
you are catching this live, yes, it is 7 hours late. We had real life.
Yeah,
But it should be up tomorrow at the regular time on the audio version and on the YouTubes. But if you enjoyed this podcast and you want to support it and the other work that we do over at the Peak of Serenity, you can do that over at our Patreon at patreon.com/Peak of Serenity. And of course, come and join the Discord. It is the best place by Anomoly about forum drama.
oh man. Whew.
Uh, and that's all I'm going to say on the subject. Thank you all for
Please.
listening, and we will see you next week.
Bye.